Fred Richani, TSC, the Sports Courier Podcast. A lot of times I get to do a lot of awesome things on this podcast. Get to interview a number of wrestlers, celebrities. Maybe I'll go cover an event when there's not a pandemic going on. Maybe I'll throw it back to a past clip or something, talk about a fun topic, preview a pay-per-view. This is none of that. There's been some major breaking news occurring over and over and over again in the world of professional wrestling. I don't even know really where to start. I want to try to be as sensitive as I can to this topic. The short story before we dive in is that wrestling right now is currently going through its own Me Too movement, hashtag speaking out. You might be wondering what brought this up. Well, first of all, the awful alleged behavior of a number of men and some women too. And, well, the rape accusation of an alleged victim of David Starr, who is an independent wrestler, perhaps now a former independent wrestler. He is famous, or I guess infamous, when it comes to, tweeting about different things and unionizing pro wrestling. And, he says a lot of the right things on Twitter, right? It seems like very progressive, everything else, always, talking about how woke he is and blah, blah. Well, he got outed as an alleged rapist. Now, note, I got to use words like alleged, allegations, for a few reasons. One, a lot of facts are still coming out about these stories. Two, for legal reasons, I'm an independent media outlet. I ain't trying to get sued. So, I want to try to be as fair as possible. But, man, so David Starr, outed by a former spouse as an alleged rapist and an abuser. And he proceeded to put out several apologies, enough apologies that would make Drew Brees cringe. Apologies so bad that would make Drew Brees hide. And there was one that was included where he actually promoted a tweet saying he's not a rapist. And I think his initial statement was something along, and I'm paraphrasing here, you can probably find it, he deleted his Twitter account. It said something along the lines of, like, I'm sorry to all the women I've heard. I was an a-hole boyfriend, and I was looking up something called gray rape, and I wrote this I was writing this for a week and a half, and I'm like, wait a minute. You were writing an apology for a week and a half that you just happened to put out today when you got accused of rape? What? And so it set off this chain reaction because evidently Mr. Starr is not very liked in the wrestling industry, and not just for his, political views or this, that, and the other thing, but because it turns out, or it may turn out, that he's a horrible person. So that got the ball rolling for a number of women. I'm not sure who it originated with. I got to check exactly the persons. If somebody knows, they could let me know. A hashtag was created, speaking out. And a number of women of wrestling and some fans as well, have gone on record, in addition to some men, and have spoken out against their alleged abusers. And a number of them just happen to be employed by WWE NXT UK. Whew. One of them, at least that we know of at the moment, happens to be employed by All Elite Wrestling. Whew. And one guy that was just outed happens to be Jim Cornette. Yeah. But, man, I can't even keep up with the list here. So I'm just going to go over some, I don't know, let's call it highlights, the lowlights of this. This is some horrifying stuff. So here's the accusations from Jordan Devlin's ex-girlfriend, ex-spouse. This woman on Twitter named Hannah Francesca at Textbook Glovers. By the way, for any victim of abuse, wrestler or non-wrestler, that's putting themselves out there right now and has before and will after today, God bless you all. I mean, the amount of trauma, feelings you have to be experiencing right now got to be scary, and what you've been through, I mean, I want to wish that on my own worst enemy. So just God bless anybody that's been through that. God bless all the people that are courageous enough and brave enough to speak up about all this. I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible what's happening. There's no place in the industry for it. And, man, I don't really know where to start. So, like I said, let's go to the Jordan Devlin stuff. By the way, this is, I think, the 1 year anniversary, or close to the 1 year anniversary of the podcast I did on the late Ashley Massaro's rape allegations, which, oh, by the way, Daddy B never really followed up on. So, yeah, a sad cruel, odd anniversary indeed. It's great to see all the women and, again, some men speaking out against the alleged abusers. That being said, it is sad that it occurred in the first place. So, from Hannah Francesca at Textbook Glovers, this is scary. I'm really scared. Jordan Devlin, by the way, Jordan Devlin's the Cruiserweight champion, did this to me. And this is just the physical damage, not including my arse and back bruises, because I don't feel like posting that online or fancy posting that online. And then this young woman posts graphic bruises of her legs. There was one, I think there was one pic of that was kind of revealing of more bruises. Just bruises all over her leg and lower back. I'm not going to show that here because that could trigger some people. But terrible stuff. I mean, horrifying. Just absolutely horrifying. Obviously, not good. Not good whatsoever. I believe WWE has released a statement. If I can just find it right here. Okay, WWE released a statement. This is from Gary Cassidy at Wrestling Gary. Quote, "We take any allegation of this nature very seriously and are looking into this matter." But Jordan Devlin was not the only person that was linked to some crazy things, awful things. Millie McKenzie, and full disclosure, I am not a expert in the world of British pro wrestling. I'm familiar with some of the NXT UK guys. I don't watch NXT UK regularly or anything like that, so I don't want to sit here and pretend I'm a British wrestling expert as far as like some of the personalities involved, okay? Just for disclosure. So Millie McKenzie, who's a wrestler, also tweeted, and she's at Millie McKenzie0. "Very scary doing this, but I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I did. Things need to change. # speaking out. Things didn't end well with Jake. I began training other Travis Banks." That's NXT wrestler Travis Banks. "When I was 17, we had a secret 1-year relationship in which he wouldn't speak to me or near me in public in case anyone would find out. Cheated on me multiple times in front of my face and was horrible to me. Had a massive effect on my mental health and self-confidence. I hated wrestling and the person I became with him. # speaking out. I hope the speaking out movement actually creates change in the wrestling industry people so desperately need." Yeah. That's not good. That sounds a lot like a mentally abusive relationship. Really bad stuff here. Wow. El Ligero, who's been around forever on the British wrestling scene, also now part of NXT UK, at Natalie Sykes _ tweets, "Ligero was my trainer for quite some time. He befriended me when I was around 17, and at the time, I thought that was okay because he was my trainer and he had a lot of knowledge I hoped he would pass on to me. He started messaging me on Snapchat, but later was WhatsApp. He then began making sexual comments about me and made me feel very uncomfortable, but I thought I had thick enough skin to deal with it, so I would never directly confront him, but just laugh it off so he wouldn't get mad at me. It got to a point where the comments were constant. He would also ask me for selfies or photos of me wearing my wrestling gear after it was just posted to me to, quote, show him what it looked like. I never sent him photos because I thought that was very weird. But then I would post on Instagram. He would tell me how pretty I was, etc. He also became rather obsessive over my private relationships with people not involved in wrestling, belittling me and bullying them and constantly highlighting how bad the relationship was and encouraging us to break up. He would also bring up my dad. My dad is not someone I've talked about publicly, but for context, my dad has not been in my life for quite some time. Ligero thought it would be a good idea to psychoanalyze me and my relationship with my father. In the same message, he compared himself to being my father figure whilst joking around about sleeping with me. Jeez, this stuff's tough to read. It came to a point where I was in a very bad place mentally, and I completely shut down and stopped training. It was a rough time for me for a variety of reasons. Ligero would message me constantly, and I felt pressure to reply even when I didn't have any energy and it was so draining. Especially because I would wake up to massive paragraphs slating me and my wrestling abilities and how bad of a person I am, to then 5 minutes later wanting to be my friend and have a laugh. When I finally went to someone I trusted privately and told them everything that was going on about the situation was sorted, that he wouldn't be able to show up at my training school, I decided to switch to. However, he did try to message me about it and claimed he would have stopped if I had just told him, etc. We didn't have any contact at shows or online for months until he started messaging me more frequently again and tried to start a conversation just about anything. I was so scared to speak up about this because I didn't want to lose bookings, people not believing me, or siding with him. It isn't a nice feeling. During the time I was friends with Ligero, It made me such a negative person because he had such an influence on me. I hate the person I was during that year and a half. I know that to some, this might not seem like much, but I thought it was worth saying something. There's also stuff I've probably forgot to mention too, but this about covers it. Probably got to log off after this. Yeah. That's bad. And unfortunately, Natalie is not alone. In a lot of these wrestling schools, not all of them. Okay, I want to shout out some of the good ones here, like the Monster Factory with Danny Cage. I know the Storm Wrestling Academy has been closed for some time, but Lance Storm was a great trainer. A few others. Ray Glacier Lloyd, QT Marshall, they do a great job as well. But unfortunately, you get a lot of these wrestling schools, some name guys like Ligero, some non-name guys, no-name dudes, weekend warriors, that take advantage of, being a trainer and kind of either groom these girls to eventually get with them, maybe try to get with them when they're underage, or just kind of use it as a vehicle to sleep with women. And I'm sorry, whether you're a wrestling trainer, whether you're a boss at an ad agency, whether you're working at McDonald's, a manager, whatever, man. I mean, you can't be trying to screw around with your subordinates. You can't be using your power for that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's awful. And before we get to some of the other news and allegations and everything else, and it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. I can't go through everything. You'll have to search for yourself in the hashtag speaking out. Again, keep in mind, a lot of these are allegations. Obviously, they vary, but they're still not good at all. And my heart goes out to the alleged victims. But let's keep it real here. Pro wrestling is an extension of the media and entertainment industry. Now, it is kind of like an offshoot of it because it's rather unregulated, right? There's like athletic commissions. I think in some states like Kentucky and stuff like that, they kind of require, going through a commission, and Maryland's kind of infamous for that with their no blood policy and everything. But for the most part, pro wrestling, especially on an independent level, is relatively unregulated. Now, I can't speak for the UK, but I know in the US, I'm sure it's just kind of the same deal. In the entertainment industry, the TV industry, the media industry, or really any industry, but in particular, showbiz, it's about who you know. It's about relationships, right? Sometimes you don't even have to be the most qualified person to get a job. You just have to know the right person, have a good relationship. Why is networking so important? Why are relationships so important? Because sometimes you need a favor, you need somebody that can help you out with a job or an opportunity or collaborate or whatever. A lot of times, particularly in the podcasting, YouTube space, TV space, it's great. I can work with other creators. I love collaborating. Other times, it can be used against you. You piss off the wrong person. Let's say in the wrestling world, a promoter makes an advance on you. You as a woman or man say, no thanks. They could blacklist you. They could tell other promoters, you know what, don't book this guy, don't book this girl. And boom, all of a sudden, you're blacklisted and you lose out on a lot of work. And it's great. While it's sad to read a lot of stories like this, it's also great that these stories are coming out, because the more people we have like this in the industry right now, the worse it is. The worse it is. And look, there's a lot of things you can't control, right? I'm not a Trump guy. I know a lot of people aren't Trump guys. You can't necessarily boycott everything, though, because, Google's donated, Apple's donated. A lot of your favorite companies have donated to the inauguration or administration or whatever like that. It's kind of tough to pick and choose what you boycott, right? But here's what you can do. If you're somebody like me that's against domestic violence, that's against abuse, that's against harassment, and you see a wrestling promotion booking said abusers or said alleged abusers, guess what? You get hit them where it hurts. You get hit them in the wallet. You don't have to go to a show. A show's not necessary. You don't have to buy a DVD, a Blu-ray, a live stream, or anything else. But it's been a huge, just day of reckoning. And based on people I've talked to in industry, people that have worked in WWE, you still talk to people based on a few independent wrestlers I talked to. I feel like more is definitely going to come out in the next few days. And by the way, there is more. I'm not done yet. I just needed to take a quick pause to catch my breath, to catch your breath. For anybody, by the way, that's watching the live stream on Facebook and YouTube, thank you so much for taking out time in your busy day to watch me, to learn about everything that's going on. I know this is, it's an amazing time in life, and it's a horrible time in life at the same time. It's amazing. There's this beautiful unity and civil rights movement. It's a horrible time because black people are still getting killed and still getting assaulted, and police are still killing with with no consequences. It's great that people are standing up for themselves, and at least in some states, things are getting better with COVID. It's awful that there's still people affected health-wise by COVID. It's awful that there are people still out of jobs or both. And yeah, it's just a rough time, man. It's just a really rough time. So the fact that not only are these women and some men coming out now to out their abusers, not only is that amazing, but the fact that they're doing it in this current climate where they have a lot to lose, during a pandemic, when work is scarce, when there's no guarantees they're going to have work when this is all over. I mean, that's super courageous. That's super brave. So shout out to them. God bless them. They're so brave. And for everybody going through the struggle right now, again, thank you so much for tuning in. I love you guys. And, I want to try to use my platform, for some semblance of positivity here. Let's see. Miasha J. Simmons, hope I pronounced your name correctly. A lot of these guys will be blacklisted, and they deserve it. Yeah, I agree. I agree. In the case of Jordan Devlin, I mean, look, again, legally, I can't be like, oh, yeah, he definitely did it. But it doesn't look good. A guy like David Starr, he kind of already blacklisted himself, but it doesn't look good. Folks, God forbid you're a good, innocent person that's ever been accused of something that you didn't do that's heinous. You should not promote a tweet with a bad apology saying you're not a rapist. Just some advice. Just some advice from somebody who works in marketing. Okay? Just some advice right there. I am kind of curious to see the responses of some of these people for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you this. If you're an innocent person and you're accused of stuff like this, man, you better be on the highest platform right now, hollering and screaming, because this doesn't look good for any of y'all. Let's see. Some people here said, okay, somebody sent me this. Jordan Devlin, Ligero, Travis Banks, David Starr, Joe Coffey. A few other people are being exposed as abusers. I'm omitting some names here because, there's a gray area, and I got to warn everybody too. Well, take every allegation you see seriously, 110%. I don't care if they're your friend. I don't care if they're your favorite wrestler. I don't care if they're your least favorite wrestler. I'll obviously take any of these seriously, but just do it with some nuance, right? There's a lot of these seem very credible, but, I did see one account today, I'm not going to name names, that was accusing another wrestler of something, and then it turned out that was like a stalker account that was tweeting said wrestler like 200 times a day and was added as a stalker account. So just before you tweet out anything, especially if you're a media outlet or whatever, just proceed with caution. That's all I'm saying. Proceed with caution. Proceed with nuance. So here's an anonymous allegation. An allegation towards an anonymous wrestler from Ariella Nix. She is a New York-based wrestler. In fact, I actually had lunch with her, I think dinner, about a year ago with my friend Kim Angle. And shout out to my friend Kim Angle. Shout out to my friend Candice Cordelia, who I spoke to extensively about this topic before going on the air. I love to get a different perspective, especially, obviously, given the topic, female perspective. So shout out to all you. I love you guys. But Ariella posted some really heartbreaking stuff here, too. Back in 2013, before I was in the business, a friend and I flew out to LA for SummerSlam weekend. The night before a pay-per-view, we decided to check out the hotel bar where talent was staying. A lot of people were there. We had a great time. One particular wrestler who was very drunk kept hitting on me and was practically begging me to spend the night with him. I was caught off guard since he's married, but I told him no. As we were leaving, my friend wanted to get a picture with him. We walked over to him, and before we could say anything, he physically grabbed us, as both of them, threw us into the elevator to take us to his room. Then, while in the elevator, he pushed me to the wall and started kissing me. I had no clue what to do. He brought us to his room, where he proceeded to beg me to stay for about 20 minutes and kept trying to get my friend to leave me with him. He finally realized nothing was going to happen, and he let us go, not before trying to pull my top down as I was leaving. I had no clue how to feel, and I was just grateful he finally let us go. I knew I wouldn't have been able to fight him off if he had tried to take things further, but the weird thing is I never felt like a victim. It wasn't until the past year and hearing other women's experiences that I realized how serious this situation was. Again, I was just grateful he let me go. I have been booked on the same show twice with him and just made sure I stood as far away as possible. Both times I could feel him checking me out the whole time and trying to figure out where he knew me from. All of the women that have come out with their stories inspired me to tell mine. I wanted to share my story in support of these women, not in looking for sympathy or trying to ruin the guy's career. I know my story is nowhere near as worse as others, but these actions are not okay, no matter how big or small. Thank you to all the women that were strong enough to tell their story. You always have my support. And Go Pro Wrestling tweeted at her, what the F? I hope the person is gone from the business and you never have to feel unsafe. I'm so sorry this happened to you. She said, thank you. And nope, you can see him on AEW every Wednesday night. Yeah. That, my friends, is bad. And she responded to a tweet about naming names. She said, sadly, it's unlikely AEW would, as an AEW would punish him. And they have protected others who have been accused of stuff like this, so I don't think they change their tune now. Now, as far as who did this, I am not going to publicly speculate. I'm just not, because, Ariel is entitled to her privacy, and again, I don't know, and I don't think it's fair to put it out there. But, yeah, a former WWE wrestler who is now in AEW. Who was married at the time. And might still be married. I don't know. Scary stuff. Scary stuff. And by the way, this is based in the U.S. This isn't the UK. Oh, my God. Just some really, really awful stuff here, man. Some really awful stuff. But, my God, it gets worse. It gets worse, and it gets weirder. Again, I don't want Jim Cornette to stick his lawyer at me. So these are allegations against a very public figure. Allegations. From a gentleman by the name of AKI, at AKI_evolution. He is an indie wrestler. He is, at AKI_evolution. I made a very vague post about Jim Cornette yesterday. In the face of current events, I feel the need to clarify and speak up. During my first year in the business, his wife Stacy attempted to groom me. Grooming means taking advantage of somebody that's young, and it doesn't just happen in wrestling. It happens in a lot of showbiz. Essentially, a person in power will try to groom a young person, usually underage, so that when they are quote-unquote of age, they swoop in and date them or have some type of sexual relations with them. It's awfully disgusting. So that's the context for grooming. Anyway, this is awful stuff. Alleged awful stuff. She approached me via DM, sent me lewd photos I never asked for, implied protection from the Kentucky Commission, stating he was a family friend, and told me she was going to F me as if I didn't have a choice. My experience with them is tame compared to others, though. When Jim was booking OVW, if you wanted a contractor on a show, you had to perform you had to perform sexual acts on his wife, many times with him watching. So, for all my Gen Zs out there, he's essentially accusing Jim Cornette of being a cuck, among other things. This has happened for many, many people. A close friend of mine was groomed and basically brainwashed by them for years. When he finally escaped, Stacy went to great lengths to not only terrorize him, but actively try to have other wrestlers physically assault him. I was one of them. She sent me pictures showing tires of he's slashed, and bragging about setting him up to lose his job, apartment, even his car, all because he escaped an extremely toxic relationship and didn't want anything to do with them. Stacy bragged about being able to call the Kentucky Commission to give him quote-unquote targets. He was a family friend, and if she wanted, she could turn his attention to anyone licensed in the state to potentially hurt and sometimes ruin their careers. When he says, quote, cult of Cornette, it's because he has a history of taking advantage of greenhorns, using his power and position as booker for OVW in order to fulfill his and his wife's sexual desires. They use their place of power to hurt many, many people. No one wants to speak up because of his position in wrestling, but this is extremely common knowledge among OVW alumni. This will probably ruin a lot of opportunities in wrestling, and that's fine, but make no mistake, Jim Cornette is trash. He and his wife have made power plays in order to hurt many, many people. F you, Jim. F you, Stacy. You are scum. We'll start as alleged victims of British wrestlers coming out and British promoters. Has spawned into a wrestling-wide deal. So, OTT Rev Pro and TNT Extreme, which were the main wrestling promotions that were linked to David Starr. I believe David Starr is a former OTT champion. He had a match that was raved about with Jordan Devlin, I believe earlier this year or late last year, by the way. I think that's what really kind of got them on the map as far as like match quality and stuff. So anyway, this is from Wrestling Observer. In the wake of indie wrestler David Starr being accused of sexual assault, several independent wrestling companies have stripped him of their titles or announced intentions to not work with him again. On Thursday, Ireland's OTT tweeted that their championship is now vacant. Rev Pro tweeted their Southside title is now vacant. And TNT Extreme Wrestling announces they have also stripped Starr, real name Max Barsky, of their titles. He was holding all their titles, I guess, and they stripped him. Man. Oh, just god-awful. Oh, my God. It's terrible stuff. By the way, the person that outed David Starr, her name is Tori, at Slay Mysterio. That's SLA, Mysterio, like Rey Mysterio. She also accuses David Starr of keeping old screenshots from 2016 to ever use against me if I were ever to speak up, making me look angry and crazy. He has folders for several people. Wow. Yeah. Not good. And now David Starr is off of Twitter. Okay, by the way, I think it was Sierra Loxton, who a retired professional wrestler at Sierra Loxton, who I guess started the movement, a hashtag and everything else. So kudos to her. Man. Just a lot going on. Alexis Falcon outing Craig West. Full disclosure, some of these people that are being outed I'm not really familiar with, but I guess they're known on the independent scene in the UK. Pretty damn terrible. Big E of WWE made a statement here. I pray our industry is swiftly rid of all these predators and abusers. To everyone brave enough to tell their story, I'm so sorry you had to endure this. Hashtag speaking out. Big E is the man. God bless Big E. Court Bauer of MLW owner and promoter. Went to read a speaking out story and poof, it's gone. It's dangerous and disappointing when some in wrestling media can be bullied and intimidated into taking stories down that shine a light on the evil lurking in the shadows. Be brave, be damn journalists, and cover the damn story. Mustafa Ali tweets, you don't have to share your pain, but if you do realize how incredibly brave you are, sharing your pain may prevent someone from experiencing the same pain. My heart is with you. Jordan Grace, currently of Impact Wrestling. I speak out a lot about what I believe in and consider myself brave, but seeing all these stories and not being able to tell my own is a hard reality check. Tegan Knox also tweeting support Pete Dunne, arguably the top star in NXT UK and the UK in general. Can't believe I have to say this, but as I am reading more and more accusations towards people involved in British wrestling, it doesn't matter if I had issues with the abusers in question already or if I consider them a friend. Independent, AEW, or NXT UK, all equally disgusting. I urge people to use whatever platform they have to show support. Cynical tweets assuming there will be silence if it's someone part of the same brand is just a waste. This is just so really sad. Allegations by Clips of Sage against Brian Fury, head of New England Pro Wrestling Academy. I mean, there's so much, man. There's so much, and it's just awful. Again, it's great that they're being put out there, but at the same time, it's just sad these women had to go through what they went through. And oh, geez, there is another story. This one's very graphic. So, independent wrestler Liz Savage, I don't know if she still has the tweets up or not. She accused former WWE writer, former WWE, ROH, TNA Impact Wrestling writer, Dave Lagana, of sexual assault as well. Dave Lagana, by the way, is currently the writer and I believe executive producer of NWA Power. I think she deleted the tweet. I can't really find it. So I do have screenshots of it, though. So she recently tweeted this out publicly. Again, these are all allegations, but they all look very bad. And then we'll go to the comments and get some thoughts from people watching and listening live right now. After being friends with Dave Lagana for 4 years, he sexually assaulted me. I moved to LA after 2 years of him asking me to come out. He told me I was a real friend to him as I had been there for him when he was at his lowest. He wanted to bring me out to LA for work. He was back and forth between ROH and TNA companies at the time. This was 2010. But told me if I came to LA, he would put me on NWA Hollywood, and he needed someone to help him make the wrestling promotion agency he wanted to run a reality. I could even stay with him until I got my own place, and he'd show me around. None of this happened except the moving part. About 2 months into my stay, I had gotten a job and was working very little. My savings running dry from adventures all over job hunting. One night he was home, and we went to bed. Everything was normal. We had clothes on. I fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night, and he had his hand down the front of my pants underneath my underwear. He was also touching himself. I was scared. I froze for a moment and pretended to be asleep. I then tossed hard and pulled away from him, hoping he'd leave me alone. He did. He then kicked me out that week with less than a week notice. I've spoken to very few people about this, mainly because I was mad at myself for letting this happen. Oof. I didn't go to the police because F the police. They don't help sexual assault victims. I didn't go to wrestling Twitter because I knew it would get ugly and they would blame me and say I'm trying to get famous. I wasn't. And now I have nothing left to prove. If you don't want to book me, oh the F well. Am I a mess of controversy in other ways? You bet. Am I malicious? Nope. Just pissed off I didn't break his effing arm. And that's terrible. All this is terrible. Again, if you are one of these people that has been accused and you are allegedly innocent, I think we're all going to need you to come out and speak up and provide receipts, because the receipts against y'all are pretty damn damning. No pun intended. Just awful stuff. Let's go to some of the comments here, and we'll dive in further. Okay. To be honest, some of the wrestlers accused give off the vibe that they do frat boy mentality things, like sexually assaulting people. I mean, yeah, unfortunately, look, man, there's a reason one of the reasons I don't cover wrestling as much as I used to, MMA as well. Look, I've met a lot of great people in MMA and pro wrestling. For those that don't know, I used to work at Spike TV. I worked on a number of Spike TV shows, a lot of them related to Impact Wrestling, Bellator MMA. Also, when I originally started TSC, we primarily covered like combat sports and everything else. One of the reasons I don't dabble in it as much and do it more for fun right now is because there's a lot of BS. So don't get me wrong. When I cover the NFL, there's a horrible underbelly there too, to an extent. I mean, y'all saw it with Colin Kaepernick and everything else. The owners would rather sign a domestic abuser than a guy peacefully protesting police brutality. I mean, all that is for real, and it sucks. But when it comes to wrestling and MMA, boxing too, man, there's like a dirty underbelly. There really is. There's a lot of great people. There are a lot of great people that I've met over the years through wrestling. Shane Helms is one of them. Mike Kingston's one of them. Diamond Dallas Page, who's a great friend. But man, there's like an underbelly of these just promoters that are scummy. That, again, as I mentioned before, they're also serve as trainers that take advantage of their position and either groom these women to have sex with them or immediately use their quote-unquote school or promotion as a vehicle to have sex with them. A lot of these promoters, again, not everybody, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of these promoters, a lot of these vendors, a lot of these people in wrestling, they're shady with money. They're shady with management. The MMA, it's like the same thing. I mean, you got to be really careful. If you're in the wrestling business, I don't care what your role is, whether it is promoter, wrestler, future commentator. Like, you got to have a high tolerance for BS, and you got to be able to see through a lot of it. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, at times, you do got to tolerate it depending on where you're at. Now, nobody should have to tolerate any kind of abuse, any kind of harassment, stuff like that. Nobody's saying that. I'm just saying, there's a lot of BS that comes with the territory. I'll tell you this, just running a site. I remember when I opened up my original site like over 10 years ago, and I was like, oh, I'll cover wrestling. I'll go to shows. This will be great. I met an MMA. I met so many liars, so many cheats. I had so many like quote unquote fake sources and people that are trying to get themselves over and get involved in my stuff that like I went crazy. I was like, all right, I got to take a break from this. That's what led me to go into more MMA, and then eventually I got back into wrestling. But man, I mean, there's a dirty underbelly. There's a lot of great people there. There's a lot of great people in the wrestling business. Okay, especially these days, I feel like there's a lot of really nice people, but man, there's a lot of scum there too. And again, when you have an industry that's kind of unregulated, unhinged, when you have a lot of these different promoters that pop up, if you're in an area that doesn't have a great wrestling school, or maybe it's a wrestling school run by a named guy, but you're not too familiar, you just want to get into business. I mean, okay, it can happen in any industry. I mean, acting, casting couches, things like that, production, TV industry, marketing, Wall Street. It's not, no industry is immune to that type of stuff, man. But wrestling, for whatever reason, it seems to kind of make it, a lot of these abusers, all these awful people kind of just linger around, hang around. It's quite disgusting. And, I guess the best way to combat it, I mean, CM Punk talked about this recently on WWE Backstage when talking about the George Floyd tragedy and Black Lives Matter and civil rights, everything. He said, even though it sounds a little contradictory, you got to fight intolerance with intolerance. I thought that was a great line and great insight by him. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexual harassment. Okay. Even if you're not the one that is being harassed, if you're aware of somebody that is, you have the power to do something about it. As a fan, you have the power to not support a promotion anymore. It's not buy their merch, not buy their streams. If you're a wrestler, you have the power to say, F it. I am not wrestling on your show, UK promotion, if you book David Starr. I'm not wrestling on your show if you book Jordan Devlin. I'm not wrestling on your show if you book Jim Cornette. I'm not going to work your convention. Whatever the case may be. Yes, there have been times, and there may still be times in the future where it's tough to speak out. There's a reason a lot of these women and some of these men here who have also been abused. There's a reason why it took so long for them to speak out. Because, a few reasons. In the case of the U.S., a lot of these abuse cases, assault cases, don't always favor the victim. Like, not at all. There's slut shaming, there's victim shaming, there's all that jazz. There's a very deep, embedded rape culture in the society. I can't speak for the UK as far as, that's concerned from a societal perspective, but when it comes to like wrestling promotions, everything like that, or any kind of industry you're in, like you're worried about pissing off the people in power. If somebody's holding your employment and livelihood over your head, a lot of times you're going to feel like, I got to go with the flow, or I got to get the hell out. Unfortunately, there's some women that have gotten the hell out, and it's a sad thing. And I think now that there's heightened awareness because of this hashtag, because of people speaking out, like, this is a time, man. This is a time to put it all out there. And look, if you're a victim and you don't feel uncomfortable speaking out, reach out to a media outlet, provide receipts. I mean, something, I don't know. My heart goes out to you. It's terrible. I mean, nobody should have to be in a position to even speak out in the first place, because nobody should be in a position to be harassed, to be abused. It's just it's just awful, man. But you can combat intolerance with intolerance. If somebody wants to be a perv, if somebody wants to be a creep, if even worse, somebody wants to be a rapist, a criminal, whatever, like, you got to combat that. Okay, if you work in that promotion, you got to not book them. If you see something horrible like that or know something horrible, you got to alert the authorities. At the very least, you got to blacklist that person and make sure they're never booked again, so they can never harm anybody again in the business. And that starts with us as individuals. Again, as fans, it starts with the wrestlers, with the promoters, with people not protecting one another just because they're boys or whatever. And you know what? Here's an uncomfortable truth. There's a chance that one of our favorite wrestlers is going to be outed in the next few days. And again, some allegations seem more concrete than others. At the end of the day, it's up to you to decide based on the receipts provided, the screenshots, and whatever other tangible proof. But, you got to come to grips that you can't put everybody on a pedestal, and that, just because a person plays a character on TV, or in the case of David Starr, plays a character on Twitter, doesn't mean they're a good person. Doesn't mean they're your friend. And, as far as on an individual basis, just forget wrestling fan for a second, especially us men, right? I think it's just incumbent on us to not only be more self-aware, even if you're a nice guy, it's good to be more self-aware. It's good to be more understanding. It's good to be more respectful, and just aware of your actions and how you treat people, especially women. So I hope that all made sense. I mean, it's just a lot to take in, and if it's a lot to take in for me and fans alike, I can only imagine what it's like to take in for the victims that are pouring their hearts out on Twitter. Again, God bless them. It's sad they're even in this position to begin with. David Schneider says, if any of this is true, this should all be banned from wrestling for next year or two. No reason for this crap. I mean, that's where it gets a little tricky, right? And I have this same conundrum with with some football players or athletes that get accused of domestic violence, and some that are even convicted of domestic violence or harassment or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, I mean, I guess by the letter of the law, anybody, no matter how good or bad they are, is entitled to or has the right to make a living. But we, again, as consumers, have the right to not support any promotions that book said abusers, right? Promotions, if they are responsible, if they're actually caring and respectful and understanding of their fan base, to me, they do have a moral obligation to say, you know what, we're not going to book this guy. We're not going to book this girl. If they're linked to some unsavory things, if they're linked to domestic violence, sexual harassment, we're just not going to book them. And if you see a promotion that is still booking them, yeah, you got to call them out. Do you have a list of any other allegations? Man, there's so many. I'm refreshing right now. I mean, there's so many. I mean, those are kind of like the main ones. I don't want to say the main ones. I mean, I don't want to devalue anybody else's experience there. Those are like the ones that are really kind of grabbing the headlines. Man. Yeah, it's yeah. It's bad. It's just bad. Okay, this another Jim Cornette allegation. I guess I'll read this one. By the way, I did see a claim about Joey Ryan, an allegation that he's known to be creepy or whatever. I don't want to get into too many details. All I can say is I did speak to a friend of a friend who alleges they were flashed by Joey Ryan unsolicitedly. So take that for what you will. Again, I think the more that these guys have done bad things, the more it's about to come out right now. The floodgates are open. Let's see if I can find. Okay, so Iron Mike Braddock tweets at Iron M Braddock on Twitter. Jim Cornette sent Stacy, his wife, after me to recruit me. Told me about how her and Jim had discussed and were curious about my sex life. I didn't take the bait. I went on to draw the biggest house OVW had ever seen in the Davis Arena multiple times. Years later, Jim Cornette decides to tell his listeners that he doesn't believe one-legged wrestlers are believable. He was part owner of OVW at the time of the shows I just mentioned. He is a POS and a coward. Man. Yeah. I guess that's, a well-known thing. Sierra Loxton, who I mentioned before, started the hashtag speaking out. I had to block Joe Coffey, as in Joe Coffey of NXT UK, on all my social media accounts because he wouldn't leave me alone. I've been told tonight that he's sexually harassed 3 girls, sending unsolicited naked images, voice notes, and stalking. Hashtag speaking out. Another person on here, Paige Gwenrell, says he did this to a friend of mine by finding her through the NXT UK tags, sent me the exact message he sent to her to initially try and slide in when she was staying at my house. Yikes. Not good, man. Not good at all. Again, I'm trying to keep up with everything. There's a lot going on. None of it good. None of it good, man. Oh wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So this one is this statement is actually from a friend of mine, Heather Lynn. Shout out to her at Heather Lynn 1024. Yeah, this is just crazy, right? When it's from people you actually know, it hits even closer home. By the way, an absolute sweetheart of a person. So she tweeted, "I'm glad people are speaking out about how toxic the wrestling business is. I spoke out several years ago about how I was treated at Evolve and was accused of lying or how it was somehow my fault. Now other people are speaking about Sal, hugs, or rubs. And I'm not sure if anyone has spoken about how Trevin is disgusting with his over-the-pants hand jobs he would jokingly ask for." I'm guessing this is a person from Evolve, which, by the way, I think is on the brink of going out of business anyway, ironically enough. Stuff like that made me walk away from wrestling, which I love more than almost anything. There are also countless wrestlers who are dirtbags, like former WWE and current AEW star who is recently married. He asked me out when I thought they were recently broken up, but they weren't, as I found out after. So many wrestlers don't care about relationships. My daughter is 16, and I'll be damned if I allow her around anyone in this business without me, not unless it's one of the very few I trust. I love the sport of wrestling, but despise the business. And that's the sentiment of a lot of people. You hear about the people that, man, you hear about the people that have been affected. You hear about some like the more bigger names on the independent scene. But I'll tell you, sad as it is to say, there's a lot of people like Heather Lynn who are no longer in the business or maybe have their foot halfway out the door, and are now out of the business because of scumbag promoters, scumbag abusers, scumbag harassers, and it's not right, man. It's absolutely not right. It really isn't. Just real quickly, too, I want to shout out the couple organizations that I've supported for a number of years. If you've been sexually assaulted, or if you're a victim of sexual assault, or if you know anybody that's been a victim of sexual assault, you could visit. You can visit donate. Or actually, you can just visit RAINN. That's RAINN with 2 N's. .org. That's RAINN.org. RAINN helps a number of sexual assault survivors, provides many resources as well. You can also call their sexual assault hotline, 1-800-656-4673. That's 1-800-656-4673. Another organization that I'm a big fan of, that I've been a big supporter of for many years, is the Nadia's Hope Foundation. Now, Nadia's Hope is based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. It's a Canada-based organization. It's run by my good friend Russia El Dib, but they have plenty of resources at nadiashopefoundation.com. If you're somebody that's been a victim of sexual abuse, mental abuse, domestic abuse, any kind of abuse from a partner, from a spouse, or just somebody in general, they have some amazing resources. You also find them on Twitter, on Instagram TV, on YouTube at Nadia's Hope. I'm a proud supporter of Russia and everything she does. She actually lost her sister, unfortunately, to domestic violence. So it's close to home, and just a wonderful person. But I'm sure there's some other organizations. Those are just a couple that I happen to support that help sexual assault survivors, domestic abuse survivors. So if you're having a problem, man, I encourage you to definitely seek out help. And whenever you're ready to speak out, if you've already spoken out or about to speak out, or live your truth, God bless you. Again, it's not easy for me to talk about. I can only imagine how hard it is for people that have actually experienced this to talk about. So again, much respect to everybody that has gone through the struggle, and that's dealing with all this and brave enough to put themselves out there, man. Okay, I just read some stuff about Dave and Jay Chris and Impact. Again, let's keep in mind some of these are allegations. I mean, like I said, all of them are allegations. What I'm trying to say is some are true, some may not be. I don't know. With respect to, legally, like, we got to say allegations, we got to say alleged, but none of it looks good. And there's no place in wrestling for it. There's no place in life for it. And I don't know what else to say other than I hope and pray for all the victims that have come out today, that will continue to come out and speak out about the awful transgressions in the world of wrestling. I hope all these people that are abusers, I don't give a damn if they're the bum that runs at the local flea market or the highest of levels in WWE or AEW. Let's get them out of here. Obviously, with any allegation, with any news that comes out, respect the alleged victim. Use nuance. Don't gaslight them. If somebody doesn't name names, don't ask them for the name. There's probably a reason they're not giving you a name. Don't assume a person's lying, either. And just be respectful of each other. Really, just be respectful of each other. And for us men, let's just do better, man. Let's just be more self-aware. If we see BS, and it doesn't have to just be abuse. When it comes to sexism, racism, any kind of ism, man, like, let's stand up against that, right? As fans in general, let's stand up against that. Media, let's stand up against that. Okay? There's no place for this in wrestling, let alone life. So I don't know what else to say other than I thank you guys who have stuck with me on this live stream. For people listening to the podcast, I thank you very much. If you think that this would be a valuable listen for anybody, please feel free to like this, share this, subscribe. I'm sure, for better or worse, there will be a lot more breaking news about this in days to come. But not good. But God bless everybody that's going through the struggle right now. God bless the victims that have come out, that are brave enough to speak about their experiences. And let's make sure that these people that have allegedly committed these awful acts, not only get justice served to them if possible, but never get to work a day in their life again in professional wrestling. Never get to make $1, 1 cent from professional wrestling again. Until next time, everybody, as always, enjoy the matches. Please stay safe, and please be kind to each other.